We're going to dive into how motor units, they send the signal to the tissues, and then what specific muscle, what specific tissue is being attached to that signal. So we're going to start off with the central nervous system. So let's say there's spinal cord, brain, and then we want to send the signal to, let's say, the bicep. Oh, my drawing is terrible. So this signal attaching to this bicep. Now, when we're looking at the signal being sent, the all or nothing principle states that each signal sent from the spine nervous system through the neurons and then to the motor units at a specific layer of muscle tissue, especially in between the perimysial grooves. So there's epimysium, there's perimysium, and then there is endomysium. So it's different fascial layers connecting different bundles of muscle tissue. So let's say we would cut the bicep in half. So we have bone, middle, humerus, if we will, on this one. Now let's say from right here is the bicep. So we're going to do a bicep curl. So this signal, if we do the bicep curl the same way every time, maybe we switch it up and do it more horizontally instead of by our side. That's awesome, that's fine. That's where you get into patternized training. And when the motor unit goes into a deep muscle layer, so let's say there's different bundles, and then there's even more different bundles within there. So it turns into circles upon circles within circles kind of deal. And it's small motor units that can attach in these small layers. So let's say we're doing the bicep curl, right? Same way every time. We're addressing this line of tissue over and over and over again. So more or less those motor units around right here are being stimulated, okay? What are not being stimulated? Maybe the other ones on the sides. So if we're not addressing all the tissues around there, these muscle bellies, sarcomeres, if we will, those will start to get stimulated, and those will almost overpower where the signal is not being sent to the other tissues. So when we're addressing each area, that then goes into, if you guys have heard our podcast for a while, workspaces, joint movement, and you can build up that so you can address multiple tissues and layers around the whole joint and whole muscle belly. And that's where the signal being sent has to be very specific. So when we're going back to the all or nothing principle, the signal sent from the brain to the tissues, if it's sent to only these sarcomeres, that's where we'll probably notice, depending on the type of intensity, the strength or duration of the intensity, that's where you can see that certain areas and growth properties occur from there. But when you're stimulating bicep, like especially the machines that you see in the gym, they have the pictures, biceps, triceps. People think that if they do this exercise, that they're getting the whole belly. They're getting this whole thing. In fact, they're only getting a small portion. And that's where it's not 100% true. And that's the first thing you need to know when addressing the tissue building, that the signal has to be sent in multiple ways. So how do you send it in these other ways? And that is where you add rotational movement. So you go workspaces, say level 3, to where you're going through the biggest range of motion. But from right now, like instead of doing a bicep curl, how I typically would, I would maybe try to rotate and go the opposite way or come inwards, changing the angles. Because that goes back to our point with the sliding filament theory, to where actin, myosin, contract, relax. However, and that's in a 2D model. When you look at a 3D model, you start noticing that they permeate laterally, which has the very big importance of angular movement and angular stimulus being sent. So we're addressing more tissues, so we're spending our time wisely, because tissues can only adapt so many times throughout everyone's life.
Yeah.
And that's where we start getting to some of these specifics.
Yeah, I think for those listening, what Dr. Jace, just recap, refresh, so you guys are still with us. The all or nothing principle is when a neuron fires, it activates all the fibers in the unit. But if you just do the same training over and over again, it's only activating that unit each time. And that's where you're going to ignore the other units. And you're going to not get stronger and have a bigger mass because you're missing other units of stimulus, basically what is being said.